And then 9/11 happens, and all of a sudden you're thinking about, okay, Islam and America, Islam and war, Islam and jihad, Islam and terrorism. But after 9/11, you go back into those surah and you're like, wait a minute, do we have to conquer the world? Are we trying to establish, and I was,
global khilafah,
right? And I'm thinking, I read all of these surahs before this, but they just didn't, I didn't understand them in that way.
You mentioned regarding 9/11, our relationship with the U.S. Constitution as Muslim Americans. Recently in the news, Charlie Kirk, he was shot. Now it's basically well known that majority parts of our government have some connection to Israel via AIPAC. And if you've seen the interview with Tucker Carlson and Representative Ted Cruz, what do we as Muslim Americans do? How do we react?
I mean,
وكانوا قدوة للناس هنا مروا وكانوا قادة أطهار.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to UnityCast episode 5 with our dear Shaikh Ubaydullah Evans. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are probably wondering where Abdullah is. He's a bit busy today, so now, inshallah, I'll be the one hosting today, so you're going to have to deal with me. But inshallah, next time he'll be back. Shaykh, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
I
for
really
having
do appreciate
me.
it.
I'm really looking forward to a good conversation.
Inshallah. Shaykh, I just wanted to get started right into it about your conversion story, as not many people may know that you are actually a revert. So do you prefer the term revert or convert?
I prefer the term convert.
You prefer the term? Is there a specific reason?
Well, because I think when you think about somebody reverting to a previous state, those two states, the state that they're in currently and the state that they used to have, should be identical. We were born upon the fitrah, which is kind of like a primordial inclination toward goodness. The actual practice of Islam with takalif, with like moral responsibility and a very clear-cut aqeedah, is something different than that natural inclination toward goodness and belief in the oneness of God. I think the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he said, every child is born upon the fitrah, and then their parents make them Christian or make them Jewish or some other system of belief the child is kind of acculturated into.
I see.
It kind of, to me, suggests that the natural way will result in submission to Allah in Islam.
Okay.
But we're born upon the natural way.
Right.
Not born upon Islam proper.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So I prefer the term convert.
I mean, there's some people who would disagree with that, but inshallah, you're more knowledgeable than me.
No, I understand that too. Some people, I think, in terms of da'wah, I think using the term revert is a very effective tool for da'wah. And if it's effective and people identify with it, use it.
Okay.
I'm just speaking of my preference, not about what's correct or incorrect.
Yes. But being in America, I believe you mentioned before that you had converted prior to 9/11. Yes. Which is, in and of itself,
which is a sign that I'm ancient.
Right. Yeah, you're an OG basically. Yeah. Which, but I mean, no, through 9/11, alhamdulillah, many people, through seeking the truth, they've managed to find Islam. I'm just wondering, how are you able to? Because there are such stories like that of Hamza Yusuf. I don't know if you're aware of him.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So I'm just wondering, where did that kind of come into your life? How did Islam?
Oh my goodness, man! My wife jokes with me that every time I tell the story, I tell it differently.
Okay.
And I tell her, although this would weaken my status as a hadith narrator, each version of the story I tell is true, because you had the convergence of so many different narrative streams in my life that were leading me, toward Islam. So you had this desire for a deeper connection with my family. My grandmother was actually born into a Qadiani, an Ahmadi family. My grandmother.
Oh, okay, wow.
My grandmother was.
That's some breaking news right there.
Yeah, my grandmother was born into a Qadiani family.
I'll have a question for you about that later on, but yeah, go ahead.
There was, of course, the legacy of Malcolm X.
Right.
I was deeply impacted by that. There was also the presence of of kind of Islamic symbols, Islamic motifs in hip hop music. That was also, a part of my conversion story. There's a lot of things, but I think it all came together when I became curious about Islam through reading in a high school textbook about the Ottoman Empire, and then inquiring of a Muslim classmate, tell me about Islam, and him introducing me to his father, and his father explaining Islam to me, and me accepting Islam at the age of 16.
MashaAllah, yeah. 16 is a very young age to embrace Islam. Yes.
Quite.
So Sheikh, 16 is a very young age to have accepted Islam. I'm sure, I hate to keep comparing you, but Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, I believe it was 17, about that age, he also converted. So you mentioned that it was through school. And one thing I want to tie back to 9/11 is, how was it being Muslim at that age? And then after 9/11, what were the feelings of being Muslim? And all of a sudden this dawn, especially being in America.
Yeah, I think pre 9/11, my engagement with Islam was, fascinating. It was this deeply personal kind of exploration, looking for salvation, looking for purpose, looking for meaning. But it didn't really, and it had a certain social relevance in the Black community because it was connected very much to Black pride, heritage, the legacy of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, and even the Nation of Islam is kind of a proto-Islamic movement, and the Moorish Science Temple of America. So it had social significance in my specific cultural context, but it didn't really have any significance in the larger context of America. It didn't, you didn't really think about your Islam vis-a-vis American society. I didn't think about it like that until 9/11.
Right.
Only then did these big axial questions about what it meant to be a Muslim in the modern West, what it meant to be a Muslim in America, what is our relationship with the U.S. Constitution, what is our relationship with being here. All of those questions kind of, for me at least, came into the purview after 9/11. Before 9/11, none of that, I can't really recall thinking about American liberals or conservatives, even thinking about U.S. foreign policy, even though the war in Iraq was before, 9/11.
Yes.
But I didn't really think about my Islam as connected to those larger kind of, social and political trends. I thought about it as something distinct from those.
Unique.
Right, just distinct from them, had nothing to do with that stuff. And then 9/11 happens, and all of a sudden you're thinking about, okay, Islam and America, Islam and war, Islam and jihad, Islam and terrorism. I had never considered any of those things, really.
So that was kind of the catalyst that, combined those two in your mind.
And it's amazing, it's amazing because if I'm being honest, I read the translation of the meaning of the Quran, from cover to cover, and I enjoyed reading the translation of the Quran. And of course, you read Surah Al-Anfal, you read Surah At-Tawbah, surahs that bring us to the threshold of war. And you read them as, the people of falsehood wanted to extinguish the light of truth. And the Prophet ﷺ and the early community, may God be pleased with them, radiyallahu anhum jami'an, they defended the integrity of the truth. And then you keep reading, and your focus is mostly personal salvation. But after 9/11, you go back into those surah and you're like, wait a minute, do we have to conquer the world? Are we trying to establish, and I was,
global khilafah,
right? And I'm thinking, I read all of these surahs before this, but they didn't understand them in that way.
Right. I'm going to tie something back. You mentioned regarding 9/11, our relationship with the U.S. Constitution as Muslim Americans. Obviously, recently in the news, Charlie Kirk, notable, some would say activist, or some would say, obviously he has his views and his stances.
Political commentator.
Right. He was shot. And he was very pro-Israel, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of touch upon the fact that I would assume that now it's basically well known that majority parts of our government have some connection to Israel via AIPAC. And if you've seen the interview with Tucker Carlson and Representative Ted Cruz, there is no doubt that surely there is some connection within our government to Israel and to this genocide and through AIPAC. And my question basically is, us as Muslim Americans, how do we react to this knowing that our government has roots in this? And I want you to answer as a person of knowledge for people who are curious as, what do we as Muslim Americans do? How do we react?
I think that it's fundamental, to understanding this question, that we understand the nature of democracy in general, and U.S. democracy in particular. There is a well-established tradition of dissent. When one's government takes a position, or when one's government has been, implicated in major wrongdoing, it is necessary. It is imperative that you declare your innocence of that to the extent possible. It is necessary that you speak your conscience. I don't believe in this and I don't support it.
Okay.
Now, of course, as a U.S. taxpayer,
right, yeah,
we're all implicated.
Technically, we are all complicit.
But we're all complicit. We're all implicated in certain ways. I'm not going to stand here and say that because we're taxpayers and because we're complicit, although I probably wouldn't use the word complicit, because we play we're contributing factors to this inadvertently in many instances. To me, that does not suggest that we have no moral integrity, right? We have a responsibility to call our countrymen to justice.
Of course.
We have a responsibility to hold our government accountable. And not only a responsibility, there's a tradition. I am a descendant of American slaves, the enslaved community in America. This was a legal, at that time, constitutional genocide.
Yes.
For all intents and purposes. And you always had good people, a lot of religious communities, Quakers, Seventh-day Adventists, people that, declared the immorality of the American, slave, the institution of American slavery. And I don't think that they understood themselves to be any less American than Americans who were upholding,
of course, yes,
that institution.
Yeah.
I think we should take a similar stance that we are, in the name of justice, in the name of love for our co-religionists and love for our fellow human beings, holding this government accountable for the immorality, the evil, and the wickedness that it has supported in supporting this genocide. Right? And we should feel I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see this brought out of the shadows. This isn't something this clandestine. No, you can do this from your rooftop. There's nothing more American. And I don't even saying there's nothing more American. I mean, the goal isn't to be American, but I'm only saying that to suggest this isn't something you have to be ashamed of. This isn't something you have to feel violates your patriotism or commitment to the United States. No. That's one of the greatest misunderstandings that some communities bring with them from outside of America.
Yes, right.
That when you say, I am American, that doesn't mean you support everything the government does.
Right. Although some people would take it that way, yeah.
Not domestically and not in terms of foreign policy. Right? That doesn't mean that. That means that I share an internal subjectivity with these people, that this is our home. Right? I'm situated here. I'm living here. I recognize and identify with America as my home.
This is our country.
This is our country. That's not saying anything about policy. That's not saying anything about government. That's not saying anything about politics. Home. That's all. Home.
Right.
That is, and it sounds like an oversimplification, but I think it's I think it's on the nose. America for me is just home. That says nothing about how I relate to its politics, its economics,
course, yes,
its government,
right.
its policies. It's my home.
Hmm. So in terms of us being Muslim Americans reacting towards whatever goes on in Washington, D.C., we need to take a stance in which we understand that we're not necessarily a part of the problem, but we do have to hold ourselves accountable in some respect, in some degree.
I mean, if something was something terrible was happening in my home,
Hmm.
what responsibility would I feel to step up and put a stop to it?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's my
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's my home. It's something
Yeah.
horrible happening in my backyard,
Hmm.
right? In my home,
Right.
right? In my name, with the use of my tax dollar.
Yep. Yeah. Right. Going back, I just wanted to touch upon, you mentioned very early on you converted age of 16. Were there ever any instances that you felt like there were some cases of maybe blackness that you felt in certain immigrant communities or
Oh, certainly.
being Muslim?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. Do you care to discuss some?
Well, I mean, I don't care to discuss the particulars. I
Mhm.
will say that.
Do you think there's any lessons to be learned for the audience, perhaps?
Well, I do think that bias against people that are different than you, especially people that have been publicly maligned, people that maybe your experience with them is limited,
Hmm.
and you've been saturated with negative images of them on television, on the radio, in the movies. Maybe bad stories have been shared among family members, community members, etc. And so then I show up as a representative of that community.
Hmm.
And unless a person is very conscious of what they're doing,
Hmm.
it almost becomes natural to treat the person that you're viewing, the person that you're encountering, as an extension of those tropes, those
Mhm,
stereotypes, those stories, those images that you've seen.
Right.
And I think that certainly has happened to me. The reason I don't want to discuss the particulars is that I think all of us could fall into that. Now, I would hope less so for myself because I've been the victim. I've been I've been subjected to such,
Mhm.
biased and profiling, kind of treatment. I've experienced that, so I hope I would be more conscious than to do it to someone else. But I think unless you're particularly conscious and even I'll say spiritually, you have an appreciation for God's creative power. And I don't mean that just in the way that people physically look, but even in their stories, their talents, their abilities, their cultures, which is not to say that everything is halal, but at the very least, this is the way that God creates.
With differences.
With
Yes.
differences. And our point of departure with each other should be curiosity,
Mhm.
right?
To learn.
To learn, to be open before judgmentality. This is wrong, that's right, why do you do this?
Mhm.
And certainly not, hatred or discrimination. But yeah, there's some of that in the Muslim community for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, of course.
for sure.
Yes. Again, going back, you mentioned your grandmother was born into a Qadiani family. I wanted to bring that back again. How was that like? Was there any conflict there, or what?
Well, you have to understand, man, the Ahmadiyya, and I'm using Qadiani and Ahmadi
Right,
interchangeably,
yeah. Which is what I assumed. Yes.
Yeah, the Ahmadiyya, this was one of the early Islamic, movements that came to America, propagating Islam in Black communities.
Hmm.
And so, they had a market effect on a lot of urban centers in the U.S. Chicago being a place that they really, had some influence
Very
on.
business oriented.
Business oriented, focused on outreach, and I think that it served as kind of a place of onboarding
Hmm.
for a lot of people in the Black community to, experience some of the ritual, some of the language and the liturgy of Islam. And my grandmother's family was one of those families.
Hmm.
Now, don't really think that she was able to sustain her commitment to the faith community or the faith as she got older.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as my grandmother, you know, progressed in age, it was just something that was a part of her past. You know, in fact, by the time I was born, you know, it was Christmas and Valentine's Day. And, you know, it was just something we noticed that her side of the family had, you know, strange Arabic sounding names. And
Other than that, it was
yeah,
Okay.
and my grandmother's surname was Muhammad.
okay.
Was Muhammad. So that
Right.
was like you know, it was kind of like, it was something remarkable to us,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't really have any impact on daily life.
Mm-hmm. Did that have any impact on you converting?
Well, I did feel in converting that, for many reasons, that Islam was a part of me. I didn't feel, you know, sometimes people ask me, why didn't you become Hindu? Why didn't you become Buddhist? Why didn't you become, you know, why didn't you practice Shinto?
Right.
And I always say that in addition to the message of Islam being very compelling to me, you know, the oneness of God, the prophethood of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, Islam was also something I felt like I could grasp. I felt like I could be. You know, I always tell people, man, conversion, the first thing, Islam has a natural persuasive force. I really believe that, man. This deen is the best thing going, man.
Mm-hmm.
I say that as somebody now that has been practicing Islam for a really long time. Not really long time, but 25, 26 years. And Islam really is a beautiful, beautiful religion. And it has a natural persuasive force. The thing that people who want to call to Islam have to do is they have to remove the foreignness from Islam. See, when something is foreign, you can't really evaluate it on the basis of its merit. You're too
Mhm.
busy thinking, that's weird.
Mhm.
That ain't for me.
This is out of the ordinary.
It ain't for me.
Right.
It's just something that, you know, which is probably how I looked at Hinduism or
Mhm.
Buddhism. That ain't for me. Right? Right. But Islam was something due to my family, due to what happened with hip hop, due to Malcolm X, due to the Nation of Islam, and those kinds of groups. I felt like, yeah, if I want to, I can be that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can authentically embrace that religion.
Yes. It was almost like the pair of clothing that was perfectly tailored.
Yeah,
right?
I can. You know, I don't know about perfectly tailored, but I can do that.
You can do that, right?
I can be that.
Mhm.
Whereas some of those other religious groups,
You would need to fit a certain face, right?
It would be like, why would I ever do that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Just,
Yeah.
you know, you feel me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So another question I wanted to ask was, as American Muslims, obviously we live in a time where things 50, 100 years ago wouldn't be considered so normal. I'm pointing at, you know, LGBT and things like that. How as Muslims in this contemporary age, how do we draw the line there? Knowing things are so vague, it's not really black and white, it's more of a gray area. How can we draw the line?
I mean,
Because there are certain Muslims that do get involved with these activities and they claim that, you know, these are with our religion and for the sake of peace, for the sake of unity. And we're not.
Well, here's the thing, man. I think that there's two approaches that you can take to this.
Mhm.
One, the halal is bayyin and the haram is bayyin. The Prophet ﷺ said the halal is clear, the haram is clear. And in between them, there's mutashabihat. There's areas of uncertainty. The one that stays away from those areas of uncertainty preserves his deen and preserves his honor,
Mhm.
right? It's like, you know, having your animals graze close to the sanctuary of a king. This is from the hadith, not from me. You know, graze close to the you know, a sanctuary, that, you know, a place that a king has designated as a sanctuary. If you let your animals, you know, graze close to that sanctuary, maybe they go in it, right? And then those animals and their owner earns the scorn of the king.
Mhm.
On the other hand, part of me, and this is one of my own views, so it's probably wrong. But I mean, that's a hadith Nabawi. That's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ.
Right.
So if a person takes a very conservative approach and just says, "Hey, I don't even get involved with that stuff,"
Mhm.
I don't think we can fault them for that if they do it ihtiyatan, to preserve their deen.
Mm-hmm.
The other way that I like to think about it is being out there dealing with society, with just whatever challenges are there. This is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that he was front and center, that he did not run from the trends of his day. He did not run from tribalism. He did not run from female infanticide, people burying their daughters alive.
Mm-hmm.
He did not, run from the Quraysh's deep investment in the trade of alcohol. He did not run from the misogyny that was a part of their world. To call to Islam is to get out there in it. So I guess the first approach is kind of like, if I want to preserve my integrity and my deen, and I just choose to unplug, say, hey, the danger of that approach is that I think with each successive generation, our ability to unplug gets less.
It gets more difficult.
It gets more and more difficult because, maybe your parents, it's very easy to unplug. This stuff is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The rainbow flags,
Yeah.
what is this? But their children, they grew up with these.
It's
people.
more confrontational.
They're right. It's right there.
Right.
Their grandchildren, it's really
Right there in school from kindergarten.
from it's right there. So a part of me feels like when you're trying to just unplug, eventually it's going to go looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, and to use an old adage from the street, there is nobody looking to kill me because I'm looking for them too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming, it's not that you're coming for me and I'm just retreating.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're looking for me and I'm looking for you. So I'm trying to meet your shar with khair.
Yes.
I'm trying to meet your evil with good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm trying to counter. I'm out there right in the middle, trying to counteract your evil. Because just running from it, the danger is that it might eventually catch me.
Right.
So I may have to turn and fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're saying we as Muslims living in America at least need to have that kind of confrontation, not confrontational, but sort of that head-on stance.
You got to take and see, the thing is, a head-on stance doesn't mean a confrontational stance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it does mean we have to establish a position
To tackle the problem.
on these issues. We
Yes.
can't just say, "Oh, I don't even."
Right.
I don't even think.
Just
about
turn
it.
the TV back on you.
I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
No, you got to say something.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that the more you engage, the easier it gets,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because often, engaging these social issues is like walking in a minefield. You know what I'm saying? You're
Mhm.
trying to establish with clarity, the position of Islam on these moral issues. At the same time, you don't want your children to think that you're mean-spirited, that you hate people, that so you're trying to get around, you're trying to establish, and you're trying to also affirm, for instance, everybody in America has the right to live as they want, just like I do, right? If they passed a law that being Muslim was illegal, how would I, so you're trying to affirm, your commitment to pluralism and affirm your moral commitment to deen, and so I think it's a delicate dance, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delicate dance. Yeah, it's a delicate dance, man.
Well, with that, Jazakallah khairan. Very well said, Sheikh. I really appreciate you for coming out to Unity Islamic Center today. Much appreciated. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of UnityCast. Inshallah, we will see you in the next episode. Please remember to subscribe, to like, and to comment. Let us know what your thoughts were. And inshallah, we'll incorporate them into our next episode. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.